Hello, my name is Trinity from Trinity Educational Mission, introducing the latest research in education. Have you ever found yourself saying something like this? Why can't my child be more like the other child? Or perhaps the opposite. Looking at that child makes me think my child can succeed too. Many parents compare their children with other kids. But the real question is not whether parents compare their children. The real question is how they compare them. The study I'm introducing today sets out to answer exactly that question. Today's study was published in the international journal Behavioral Sciences. The researchers conducted the study with 317 Chinese parents of children between the ages of 5 and 6. They examined the several factors including how parents compare their children with their peers, parent-child closeness, mindful parenting, and parental education anxiety. The researchers asked one important question. Can the way parents compare their children with other children influence the relationship between parents and their children? Many people assume that comparing children is the problem. However, the findings told a different story. The researchers identified two different types of upward social comparison. The first is called upward contrast. This happens when parents focus on what their child lacks compared to other child. For example, that child is so much better than mine. Why can't my child do that as well? The second is called upward identification. This occurs when parents think that child improved through effort, so my child can grow as well. In both cases, parents are looking at a child who performs better. But the way they interpret that comparison is completely different. Their results were fascinating. Parents who frequently engaged in upward contrast reported lower levels of parent-child closeness. In contrast, parents who more often used upward identification reported stronger parent-child closeness. In other words, it wasn't the comparison itself that mattered. It was how parents compared their children that made the difference. The researchers then explored why this difference occurred. They found that one important factor was mindful parenting. Mindful parenting means accepting children as they are, trying to understand their thoughts and feelings before judging them, and responding while remaining aware of one's own emotions. For example, when a child makes a mistake, instead of saying, "Why couldn't you even do that?" a mindful parent is more likely to ask, "What happened? What do you think we can do differently next time?" The researchers also examined another important factor: parental education anxiety. Education anxiety refers to parents' worries about their children's education, such as, what if my child falls behind other children, or what if my child doesn't get into a good school? The researchers investigated how this educational anxiety might influence the relationship between parents' comparison styles and their parenting behavior. The findings showed that parents who frequently used upward contrast were less likely to practice mindful parenting. In contrast, parents who tended to use upward identification demonstrated higher levels of mindful parenting. In other words, the way parents compare their children influences their parenting style, and that parenting style, in turn, affects the closenesses of a parent-child relationship. Mindful parenting turned out to be the key link connecting these factors. So what can parents do? First, focus on your child's potential rather than making comparisons. It is perfectly natural for children to meet peers who perform better than they do. But there is a big difference between saying, "Why can't you be like that child?" and saying, "If that child could grow through effort, you can too." When comparison becomes a source of encouragement rather than criticism, children are more likely to experience their parents' expectations as support instead of pressure. Second, look beyond results and see your child as they are today. Parents naturally notice grades, scores, and achievements. But children often notice their parents' facial expressions before they notice the report card. Children easily lose confidence when they see disappointment on their parents' faces. On the other hand, when parents accept them for who they are, children gain the courage to keep growing. Good parents recognize their children's current abilities while also believing in their potential for growth. Third, make it a habit to compare your child with who they were yesterday, not someone else today. The goal of education is not to win a competition. It is to help children become a little better than they were yesterday. If your child has worked a little harder this month or became a little more mature than yesterday, that is a growth worth celebrating. Children grow longer and healthier when their own progress is recognized, rather than what they are constantly competing with others. Ultimately, what matters is not eliminating comparisons altogether. It is changing the direction of comparison. So let me leave you with one final question. When you look at your child, what do you notice first? Their shortcomings compared to other children, or their potential for future growth? Perhaps what needs to change is not our children, but the way we see them. Good parents do not constantly compare their children with others. Instead, they help their children recognize how much they have grown since yesterday. That perspective builds confidence, strengthens the parent-child relationship, and creates a warmer family environment. If you found today's video helpful, please like and subscribe.